The first goal was we wanted to get into Sephora. So we tried to reverse engineer how do you get into Sephora. What does that mean? I have no idea. But we started like asking people at Sephora, how do we get in? What do you need? What are the requirements? Just so we could start building a spec on like, how do we build towards Sephora? This is the product that we ended up creating that's on the shelves today. But I hand drew this product. Nisha went and got it 3D printed and then did a whole photo shoot with like fake product in it. And so she got this whole photo shoot done with models, brand, everything. And we didn't actually have the product ready. So Sephora loved it. They loved the presentation. And 2.5 months after we set that goal, we got into Sephora by contract.
Welcome to the DTC Insider Podcast, where online business owners come to find actionable tips and tactics to grow their businesses. Now, here's your host, Brian Roisenthal.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the DTC Insider Podcast. I'm Brian Roisenthal, your host, and in case it's the first time you join our podcast, well, we have interviewed over 200 founders so far. It's the 5th season, and we typically discuss, business growth, what's working for brands right now, the challenges they have to acquire and retain customers, and of course, to grow a brand in this tough environment. Today, I have a great guest. She has a great story. Her name is Madhu Punjabi, and she's a co-founder and CEO of Lion Pose. Hey, Madhu, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, Brian.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I know you have an amazing story. No pressure, but I would love for you to tell the audience more about how you started your career far from the skincare space, right?
Yeah. I guess my official career started in 2007 after I graduated undergrad. And I was in finance, actually, at Google very early. I would say Google was smaller at that time, but not that small. It was 10,000 people. And so, but it was like the beginning, I feel like, of the second wave of Silicon Valley. And it was really, really exciting. So I started in finance, then I moved into partnerships for Google Shopping. And then I was a product manager at a small startup called Telepart, which did retargeting ads. And then I went to Pinterest. Well, actually, first I went to business school. And between my first and second year, I really wanted to start my own company. And it was at the time, it was called One Shop. I wanted like one place where you could use one credit card and shop all your stores. So like an Amazon for everything. And, this is 2013. So at that time, it sounded really new and different, but maybe it's not that new and different now. And I pitched it to Pinterest, actually. And they were like, why don't you come and build it here instead of building it on your own? I did that over a summer as an intern. And then they asked me to stay on while I was at business school. And so I was at business school in Boston, and I flew back and forth between Boston and Silicon Valley for my last year, which was so intense. But the same month that I graduated is the same month I launched the shopping product at Pinterest. And it was like very exciting. So a couple of years later, I experienced like my first IPO with Pinterest, and that gave me the flexibility to finally start my own thing. So that's when I started to become really interested in finding my own company.
So that's amazing. And I wanted to ask you more details about that journey because, you said 2007, you were at Google.
Yeah.
Right. So I think for context for everyone in the audience, if I'm not mistaken, they launched YouTube in 2005, right? More or less.
It must be. Yeah, it was like not
It
that
was just
long
so
before.
it was super like
Yeah.
we all say, yeah, I mean, Google has been around forever, but not really. I mean, it's been a while. It's been over, 20 years, 25 years, more or less, right? But YouTube, back then when he started working there, it was fairly new.
Very new. Very new.
And you were building something even newer, which was Google Shopping, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what were you doing at your time at Google? Because you came from the finance background. So what were you doing specifically there? If you can, of course, tell the audience
Yeah.
normally?
So I got in because I went to Stern undergrad, which is like a business school. And I came in through the finance. There was like the very first finance rotation program for undergrad. So I came in through there. I feel like I got really lucky. And my first job was they called it APLA. It was like Asia Pacific Latin America. And it was to kind of do all of the sales compensation for all the sales teams in all these areas, which is like basically the whole world except for the United States. So I got really familiar with the sales teams and how we sell ads, how we make money. And then my second rotation in finance was it was called, oh my God, I can't remember the name, but it was doing all the budgeting for everything that was non search. So
Right.
Maps, Gmail. I mean, at that time, it was like not that big compared to search. Search was everything, but like everything else was this two-person finance team, which is me and my friend Jenny. And we just like managed all of the budgets for these areas. And then I ended up like honing in on shopping because we had a very, very small team on Google Shopping, which at that time was called Frugal. It was like half of a PM, like one half of a product manager and a couple engineers. It was not that many people. And we were just making a lot of money from it. And so I remember thinking like, wow, we're making money, but we have almost like no one on the team. So I did this presentation to Marissa Meyer and was like, we should really invest in this product. I worked with a couple of other PMs that really wanted to invest in this product. One of them being Samir Samat, who is now, I mean, he was the head of Android for a very long time. I think he's maybe still is. And at that time, Samir was really splitting his time between Google Health, which used to be a product, and Google Shopping. Once we got the okay from Marissa Meyer, that team blew up. And that's when I joined that team. It grew from like a couple engineers and a half a PM to dozens of PMs, like hundreds of engineers. Now that team is like huge.
Yeah. So, I come from, I own a growth marketing agency, but I did there. So I come from a different background too. And what I noticed about, like, for me, coming from a different background, in my case, computer science, gives me like a different mindset, analytical mindset, strategic mindset, and a different way to look at things, right?
Yeah.
In your case, with the experience that you had in these huge companies doing these big things you were doing there, how did that shape you to start where you started years later? And we are going to talk about Lion Post for the rest of the episode, of course, but what
Yeah.
did you learn that served you well for starting Lion Post?
Wow, no one's asked you this. I mean, I haven't thought that far back to Google, but Google was the foundation for everything for me, especially at that time. I think for me, there was a couple things that I saw. One was I saw that we were really creating the internet at that time, right? It was just like the beginnings of a lot of things. Search had been just created, but everything else, like what Google today, we were working on that. So, for example, you search for weather on Google today. That didn't exist when I worked there. If you search for like weather in, Argentina or San Francisco, you would have to like wait for 10 links to show up and click on, the weather channel link.
Right.
Today on Google, you search for it and it immediately shows it to you. In fact, now you have like people have Google Home and you just say, hey, Google, what's the weather like today? And it just tells you, right? How was that made possible? Nobody even thinks about it. But the team that I was on, which was like product partnerships, we focused at that time on a deal, which like I wasn't the one who did the deal, but I know the people who did with the Weather Channel, where we could pull their data and surface it on Google. So Google was actually paying for that data to surface it sooner, so that you're not clicking through the
Is
link.
that the way it's done on the back end? Like there's a
Yeah.
deal between two companies? Oh, I didn't know that.
Correct. So a lot of the things that you see just show up without a link, which is a lot. A lot
Right.
of them were paid for deals because instead of us clicking into it so that they could make money through ads, we had to make up for that, right? So we had to pay for that. Other examples, I mean, at the time was shopping. Like we worked directly with a bunch of retailers to get all of their shopping feeds so that we could surface it before you even click on it. And so the goal was I still remember this, but it was like, the goal is to organize the world's information and make everything universally accessible, right? And so I think that type of the fact that I still remember that mantra of like, what is the mission of Google? We really believed in that. We wanted to make search easier. And so I think like when I look back, I think about user experience as being one of the things that's really important. I think it's lost today, to be honest. In Google today, what I hear is just, it's so big now. But in the beginning, we really did care. We cared about what people were doing, how to make their lives easier. And we would do these big deals to make that happen. And you would see it in the amount of time spent on the platform. So I think it made me see how scrappy you could be and how creative you could be to make things happen. On the outside, you see things that are already built and it can become very intimidating to say, oh my God, how am I going to build like the next cursor or something like that?
Right.
But then I was on the inside and you saw how the sausage is made. So you're like, oh, there are steps and you can break it down and not all of it is you. Sometimes a lot of it is working with other companies. I
Right.
think that made me see that like you could break any massive behemoth down into its guts and create something. So I think that's why I believed that I could create something because I had just seen the process.
Yeah. And I know Google started using a methodology called OKRs, Objective and
Yeah.
Key Results. But I don't
Yeah.
know if it was back then
It was back
too.
then. Yeah.
And
We
how
all
did you
had
look?
OKRs.
I read, Measure What Matters and the
Yeah.
book talking about that and all the stuff. And it's great, but you were there in the
I
first
was totally, yeah.
Yeah. So did that help you? Is it something that you implement these days? Is it easy? Is it hard?
Yeah. So OKRs were started before I was there. I mean, the big thing is that OKRs are, and we would always talk about this like we would always talk about stretch goals. Google is all about that. And I think the big thing is that everything was measured, right? And so that taught me the importance of data and measurement. That you set something, it may not be the right thing that you set, but like you're always measuring against your performance and against the goal, right? And so I think that today, even constantly just like looking at the numbers, making sure I know what's going on, like that is really important. Do I do it in the same process? No, because quite honestly, it was a very heavy process. I don't think it's fit for like a startup that's trying to move really fast because the process of setting an OKR sometimes would take like weeks to set an OKR. And we just don't have that bandwidth at a startup. But I think the importance of setting a goal and then just like measuring every single piece towards it, that's what we do.
How did you What was the first time you thought about starting Lion Post?
Yeah. So it's actually my second company. My first company was and I didn't mention this, but I also worked at Facebook. And so my first company was after I got pregnant with my first child. And I was, thinking about what to start. I had no idea what to start. I just knew that I wanted to be a founder. So I did the opposite of what most people do is like I left to be a founder before I knew what I was going to start, which I don't know if I advise that because it's a much harder path to just like go out there with no idea versus going out there with an idea. I don't think I would advise that now, but that's what I did. And I started off just because I knew ads really well. I knew shopping really well. I started off selling infant formula. We grew that business to 10 million sales. I ended up selling it. At the time, I brought on a co-founder investor and we had a falling out. So I didn't want to continue working on a new business with him, but my first employee, her name was Nisha. Nisha and I went to business school together, and she came on to work for me there. And we were like inseparable in this business. So we decided to start another one together. We got into YC initially working on creating our own infant formula. But because it was COVID and supply chains broke down, we had to pivot. During that time, it was really tough. We were deciding between many, many different ideas from SaaS companies to consumer companies. At the same time, I was going through my own skin issues. Like I had my second child and I was breaking out all up and down my cheeks, which I'll send you pictures so you could display it, but really bad. And then I was also talking to other moms who were also going through that situation. And it turned out that a lot of women have hormonal issues and breaking out with their skin. So I was like, why don't we try this business? I also just on the flip knew that there was like a lot of M&A activity in that business, that, there was a lot of money in that area. But I didn't know much about it. I just knew that like it's possible to start a company and get it sold. I was like, okay, let's start that. I was very passionate about it. And the thing is about, I think you know this, about founding a company, you have to be incredibly passionate about what you're doing because you spend so many hours obsessing over it. And if you're not interested in it, you'll break. So I was interested in it, which is why I was like, okay, this is like a good match of market need, my interests. I can do this. And that's how it all started.
I think, well, first you said that you wanted to be a founder no matter what, right? So I first, before commenting on what you just said, I wanted to ask you why, because, well, you say yourself, it's tough to be a founder.
Yeah.
I started working on my own in 2008. After the big crisis in the US, I was working from here, from Argentina, for an American company as a developer, and they shut down their doors. And it was like, what do I do now? I kept some clients from the US because they closed the entire company. So I started, working directly with them. And then I started my own software factory, blah. But the thing is, first time founders probably getting business and want to be a founder for the wrong reasons. They think it's about freedom in the sense of having more time for yourself and probably have less freedom. Yeah, you don't have a boss, but you do in a way. It's either
Right.
yourself, it's
Yeah.
your customers, it's your clients, depending on the business you have. You have many. So you need to work harder. Work doesn't
Totally.
end at 5 or 6 p.m. and everything is on you and you wear too many hats. Does this ring the bell?
Yeah. I mean, the problem is that like I don't think anybody believes it until they actually do it. So I was a product manager at Facebook, or Meta now it's called. And I was there, and I remember working like every Saturday that I was there. Almost every Saturday I would work at least a couple of hours. And there was like a point when I got pregnant when I was like, God, if I'm gonna work this hard at a company, then I gotta do it for myself, right? And I had this illusion of, okay, I'm gonna work just as hard, but at least I can control my hours, etc. Um, and then now I make like the first few years, like made way less than what I made, in that industry, and had way less flexibility, right? Like I can't call in sick. I can't go on vacation and sign off. I'm always on all the time. I haven't been on a single vacation where I didn't work since I started working on my own companies. But see, this is why I think you have to be so passionate and love what you do, because if you don't, you'll just be angry all the time, right? And I think that that's the truth, is that it becomes you. And so if you're not like aligned with it, it's very, very hard to keep continuing. So I completely agree. There's like actually almost no time for yourself. But I will say that there is flexibility in that you can choose when to be at certain meetings because you run the company. But it's not like you can get rid of the meetings or get rid of the client or you know what I'm saying? And so sure, if I have like a doctor's appointment in the morning, I could say I'm gonna go to a doctor's appointment, but I still need to figure out when I'm gonna do that meeting, and maybe I'm doing it at 8 p.m. at night. And so,
Yeah.
whereas I could just sign off after
Yeah.
5 p.m.
The passion part is important more than people can imagine because
Yeah.
it's it's actually simpler than it looks like because these days, sure, there are many inventions like product invention, new products, but
Yeah.
most brands sell something that somebody else sells too. And if you're going to stand out from the crowd, because you can say, my product is different because X, yeah, but they don't know. You need to educate themselves. You need to do the marketing, be there. And that's when the passion comes into place because you're so passionate that you want to scream that from the rooftop. You want to go and generate content on podcasts like this, on social, everywhere, because it's like brand partnerships, collabs, whatever you want to call them, because it's like, I cannot believe what I have built. It's amazing. I want you to have it because
Yeah.
you can benefit well as a client. Whereas
Yeah.
if you're not passionate on the flip side, well, I don't know if you were passionate or not with your first business, but if you sell something that, let's say, you import it and you sell it, let's say, which is super valid as well, probably say, well, I do it as a side gig
Yeah.
and probably it's
Yeah.
not my passion. So it will stop there. It will be just staying behind the storefront, uploading a product to a Shopify store, and then probably creating some ads and wait to see if there's some
Totally.
sale.
Yeah. And when you're not passionate, it'll eat at you. Like it'll show up in other ways. Your body will show it to you, like other ways. And so I think so. Here's the other thing: passion is such a weird thing to talk about, right? Because everybody always says you got to be passionate, but in reality, when you think about what people are passionate about, it's like singing, playing the guitar, playing golf. Like those things don't make money, right? And so what is a function that would describe passion, right? Like passion is a function of something. And so I think in business, the thing that I was very confused about is, like everybody says go be passionate, but nobody defines what passion is in a business setting. And I think it's a function of a couple of things. One, it's a function of flow. Where do you get flow from, right? If you were to work on something for a very long time, could you keep going? And that doesn't mean that it has to be like singing. Like my passion is sing. I love to sing and I get into a flow, etc. But there are other things that I get into a flow. Sometimes this is very nerdy, but like sometimes I could look at code all day just trying to solve it because it's a puzzle that I want to solve, right? So that's like, and I bet there are many people that are like that. So that's one, it's flow. Two is I actually think that here in the business setting, it has to be able to make money. So like you can't have a passion that's not going to make money because at the end of the day, you're going to burn out because you can't sustain. So it has to be something in the context of generating income. Now that means that, yeah, if singing like mine is your passion, it's going to be very hard for you to make money. So you have to be okay with that. And so I think that's like, how much can you sustain? What is your lifestyle like? How much money do you need? Because it doesn't matter how much you love something, you're going to need the cash, right? And then three is that I think you really need to think about what is it that you can improve upon, right? Like, so you need to see how you can contribute to that because I think that brings joy and satisfaction. So it's not just about flow, as many people get flow in meditation, but can you contribute to the world of meditation? That's a question, right? And maybe the founder of Calms felt like he could, right? And so, like, do you have some unique knowledge or insight that you feel like you can contribute? Because that is how you will continue to be interested in it. So for me, I think that's how I define passion. I'd be curious actually how you define passion because, especially in a business context, very hard to understand what.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Yeah, it's something definitely hard to define, but I think we all get like there needs to be an extra ingredient to just business because otherwise, I think that to get through the tough times, because there are tough times always, even if they're small, but there are always tough times in business, and if you don't know how to go through them because you don't care about the business that much, you're not passionate, probably burnout is going to win and you're going to want to give up. Sometimes it's good because sometimes it's time to give up if you're not really into that business. And sometimes it's because due to, I don't know, market demands where everything changes, these days with
Yeah,
AI, but not only that. Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic because I think we were talking about that the other day when we first met. And it's
yeah,
the fact that these days, at least the brands that I interviewed here in the podcast, the ones I talked to or I work with at the agency, the common theme that I see is that they go beyond the storefront. They care about their customers. They build communities. They have strong missions and visions, and they put those into actions. It's not just a mission statement on the website. Is they put those into action from
hmm,
internal things like hiring team members, firing team members, the company culture, what they build products around, and
yeah,
of course, what they speak about with their customers they choose to engage with, and the brand collabs, creator collabs, like everything. Everything is like why
yeah,
people choose them over somebody else selling similar stuff.
right.
So I think that's really important. And that without passion, can it be possible? I don't know, but I think it's an uphill battle, right?
Yeah, totally.
So I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you now more about, what came next? You said that you were, discussing some business ideas with this co-founder because you looked like you were certain that you wanted to be doing something with her, regardless of what you did, like SaaS or whatever company type. But once you said we're going to build Lion Bows, what came next? How did you proceed to make this company a success?
Yeah, so funny. Now that I'm like thinking about it, I did everything in reverse of what I would do today. I, initially like didn't have an idea, but I knew I wanted to be a founder. Then I had a like co-founder. We didn't have an idea, right? And so then we like come up with an idea. And so, you know, I would actually do it I would do everything the flip now, like come up with the idea, get the co-founder, get, all that stuff, get the funding. But because I did it this way, which is amazing, like I learned so much, right? And so my co-founder and I are really good friends, which is why we started the company together. And the other thing that I had like read or learned about a lot is like you really have to trust your co-founder. And I know that my co-founder and I, like we have been through so many ups and downs. We have been through really, really tough times. At my first startup, that I was like, this is hands down, this is the person that I know I need to start a company with. And it's true. Like the first few years of starting a company, incredibly hard. It's like having a child. So hard. If you don't have your like spouse, I mean, I like God bless like single parents. It is so, so hard. Right. And so I think of the same way as like raising a company. It's like raising a child. So you need a good person to do it with. So my co-founder and I were together. We both aligned on this space, mostly also because she has a skill set in operations and logistics. So this was like something that she could contribute to, right? So this is why I think passion, again, it's like, what does that mean, right? She felt like she could contribute here. I was open because what I could contribute was like growth, ads, and product management, right? And so over here, I saw, okay, I can do this as well as like, I also have the personal issue. So we started this company together, and the issue is that, well, it was just the two of us in a room. Like, what does it mean to start a company, right? We're just sitting there in a room. I specifically remember like we were in a WeWork and we came up with the name, and that's it, right? That's what a company is. We had no product, no customers, nothing, and so we started with small goals. And this is why when you asked about OKRs, this is where I feel like this is so important. I don't set like this massive OKR like Google does. It's such a process and overwhelming. But we set like small goals because it's very intimidating to be like, I'm going to build this massive company. The first goal was we wanted to get into Sephora. So we tried to reverse engineer how do you get into Sephora. Why? Yeah.
My apologies. I
Yeah.
wanted to highlight something in case someone missed that. It's like you wanted to pitch Sephora before having a product or a business, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. We were like, we have to get a deal with Sephora. And so it's funny because I didn't think about this until now, but the Google part of me was like, oh yeah, you can do partnerships without a product. Like the partnership started and then we built the product, right? And then the other part of me also was, coming from business school, I did a lot of analysis on companies that had made it in this space. And I had noticed a common theme amongst companies like Drunk Elephant, Tatcha, et cetera, was that they all got into Sephora. So when they went from unprofitable to profitable, the big step change was Sephora. And so I was like, okay, we need Sephora, right? What does that mean? I have no idea. But we started like asking people at Sephora, how do we get in? What do you need? What are the requirements? Just so we could start building a spec on like, how do we build towards Sephora? And so everything we did was like around, we were just chanting this, we have to get in. And kudos to my co-founder. I mean, she is like amazing. When we set a goal, like she does so much to get to that goal. And so we had to create a product. So this is the product that we ended up creating that's on the shelves today. But hand drew this product. Nisha went and got it 3D printed and then did a whole photo shoot with like fake product in it. So like, we had people doing these like hand motions with like pushing this out, but it looked like this. And we didn't even have product in it because it was a 3D print. And so she got this whole photo shoot done with models, brand, everything. And we didn't actually have the product ready. So Sephora loved it. They loved the presentation. And 2 months 2.5 months after we set that goal, we got into Sephora by contract.
So wow, is that normal? Like for any founder listening to this, because I spoken with many people, in Sephora and some other, retail chains, but to set expectations, what did you do different from other people that they should replicate if they want to get into Sephora or similar?
Yeah. So we just started talking to everybody in the industry. Like that was number one. Is like, how do you build a roadmap? So this is something that I learned actually from Meta. Meta would launch products really fast. I was on the video team, and we would launch things so fast. Like, I mean, it would be like from concept to launch in 2 months, right? I remember sitting with my manager at Meta once, and I was just so overwhelmed. My job at the time was to launch a news tab for video. And I was like, well, I don't even know how to do this. Like, what do I do? They just said, do this. And so she said, I'll never forget this. She said, open up a sheet of like, a Google Doc, or at the time, and they didn't use Google, but a doc, and write all the questions you have, all the questions. Like, where do we get news from? How will we display the news? Who will work on this? All of those questions, right? And she's like, and then go and talk to everybody at the company that might have the answer. So then I just started setting up coffee chats with everybody at Meta that had ever worked on news or new news, or engineers that would know how to display the news. And slowly, just like built this roadmap because I got every question that I had answered. So we did the same thing here. Like, well, we got to get into Sephora. How do we get into Sephora? What type of products do they need? How long does it take to make a product? Who makes these types of products? I had no idea. And then we just started talking to everybody we knew. Nisha and I were full time. The reason why 2 months sounds fast is because we were both full time on it. Just think about it. We're 8 hours a day, every single day, at our own laptops with no company yet. So every hour we're just sending emails, talking to people. We filled up our calendars. And so execution was a lot faster when you're spending full time.
So a company like, just to get it straight from, or to clarify, at least from my end, when Sephora, when they accept you, it's like, hey, you're in. They don't ask for a sample before doing that.
They did. They did. So part of it was we had to get samples made, which we did end up getting made. And when we first started, we had no idea how to create skincare. Like, we don't come from the industry. And this is 5 years ago. We sat in Nisha's kitchen and we started to put together ingredients, and like couldn't make it turn into skincare. It just didn't look right. And then we started asking people, well, how did they do this? Just anyone in our network. Somebody in my network, actually Moise from Native Deodorant. I had reached out to Moise, I think cold. I didn't know Moise myself at the time. I had reached out to Moise cold, and I was like, hey, I'm starting this company. Like, do you know anybody that would be in skincare? Because they make body washes and all that stuff. And he put me in touch with somebody. And then there was another person that's one of his friends that put me in touch with somebody else. And it was just this like, what's funny is I've never physically met Moise in the last 5 years, but we've had this like email relationship where I would ask him questions and he would answer. And so it's like a lot of other founders are willing to help other founders. You just have to position yourself with a very specific question, and they'll answer. Like, if people ask me, instead of asking me like, can you set up an hour to meet with me? Like, that's really hard, right? Because founders are really busy. But if they're like, hey, do you have any recommendations for packaging suppliers? I would just respond and I would tell people, yeah, here. Because it's very hard to build a business. I'd rather just help you with that. So that's an example of somebody who helped me. So I got my first introduction to a chemist through them, and we started working on our first version of Goop. And so that took they called it Goop, the inside. That took about a month. So while we were working on that in the background, we also worked on the brand and the photo shoot on the foreground and the pitch to Sephora.
Right. I kept thinking about the questions framework or the methodology that you learned at Meta. It's so simple, but so powerful. I think I've never thought about that. It's like listing all the questions you have and then start getting the answers one by one. It's
Yeah.
like intuitive, but somehow sometimes we skip the basics, right?
Yeah. It was so obvious, right? Like just put the questions on paper and ask for the answers, but nobody does that. I can
Yeah,
tell you
no,
even today, nobody does that.
100%. So let's say fast forward today and post. It's been a few years since you've been in market. What do you think about the, before talking about, let's say, Lion Post specifically, how do you feel like about the current context in, let's say, for brands right now in the last few years? What is harder? What is easier? If there's anything easier?
You mean for brands today, if they were to launch? I think there's a lot that's changed since we started. Number one, tariffs have impacted the industry. So if you're looking at cost of goods sold increasing in some cases by like 50%, in some cases by 100%, like that's hard because then your margins are hit. The other thing that has happened is that ads, acquisition is way more competitive. So, these platforms for ads have matured significantly, Google, Facebook. And with the advent of AI, a lot of these platforms are also losing their views to these platforms. So there's like less eyeballs, more money spending on ads. So that's all causing an issue for acquisition. So I think in general, the margins are getting squeezed. And so you really have to stand out from an acquisition standpoint as well as from a cost of goods sold. And so that's like one of the things that we're working on at the company is like, how do we vertically integrate so that our costs are reduced significantly? And then how do we come up with clever ways to acquire customers that are not the traditional ads like platform play? And so I think that's what, as a right now, the industry and any e-commerce company, I think is probably going through that. I'm curious to hear from you what you're seeing.
It's the same thing. Like I think that, well, you say yourself, like costs are going up, margins are thinner, competition is high, fewer eyeballs as well
Yeah.
in different channels. So I think there's, yeah, it's definitely, I don't know if tougher, easier, it's different. And I think that brands need to go back to I mean, we've been talking about this honestly for the last 2 to 3 years here on the podcast.
Yeah.
It's like brands need to go back to the fundamentals, because building a brand after the pandemic was, and even before the pandemic, even more, it was like throwing some money at these ads platforms and getting money on the back. And it's like you put $1 in, you get two out. It was that game, but then it wasn't anymore. And everyone was talking about retention. Retention all of a sudden came like so important. Whereas before it was all about new customers, which it's always important to acquire new customers. But if you are not, I'm not sure if the word is neglecting rejection, as many people say, but if you're not giving retention the importance it deserves, probably you're not giving, number one, your customers, your existing customers, the importance they deserve.
Yeah.
And second, you're not getting enough money on the back end to be able to afford to acquire new customers. So it's
Right.
like a flywheel. It's not either retention or acquisition. It's a flywheel because an existing customer to spend on your brand more money, what's the difference between that and acquiring a net new customer for the money's sake? You can
Yeah.
use that to acquire more customers as well, because if the CAC or the cost of acquiring new customer is going up, you need to have more money somehow.
Totally. And this is the thing, I know you and I talked about this before. A big thing that I'm focused on now, and building for the company, and this is now going back to like my software product management background, is an AI co-pilot for finance. Because one of the things that I learned, like we were burning so much cash in the beginning because we were in retail and we had so many additional expenditures like in-store displays. We had to pay for in-store field sales, like all the stuff that I actually didn't even know about until we launched. This like we learned in reverse, like I said, right? I didn't come from the industry, and you shouldn't either, and we just like learned. And through the process, actually, what is unique about us is that we learned, because we measured every single thing, we learned every single investment that we made, what the ROI was, what the return on ad spend was, and so I had like docs of all of this stuff, but it was all very manual. And, we had to have multiple people on accounting. We had a CFO. We had we had a lot of people constantly measuring. And for a startup our size, it feels like overkill. And so one of the things that I was like really trying to focus on is like, how do we streamline this process? Andrew Carnegie, actually, if you ever listen to the Founders podcast, I was just listening to it, and like Andrew Carnegie was like kind of the father. Elon Musk was obsessed with Andrew Carnegie as well. Many, many different founders. Jeff Bezos read the Andrew Carnegie biography. And if you read it, I just started reading it. He is obsessed with cost control. You would think he was obsessed with revenue increasing, but no, he was obsessed with costs. And so he just knew every single piece. And in order to improve on costs, he would invest in machinery or innovation at the time, right? And so for us today, in order to improve on costs, I need to invest in innovation. And that is really why I'm focused on that today, is like, how do we build co-pilots in areas where we need more metrics help and to reduce the cost that we're spending on headcount.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm a big believer in, or I preach that all the time in terms that the brands need to know their numbers. Like that's the simplest statement. Probably you need to know your numbers as a brand. Otherwise, what are you doing, right? And I know it's easier said than done because some numbers are not that straightforward to get, but some brands don't even know any numbers. What's like, how much can you pay to acquire a customer? I don't know. What's the LTV? I don't know. What's whatever? I don't know. Gross margin? I don't know. So it's like if everything is I don't know, then what game are you
Why do you
playing?
think they don't know?
Yeah, and so what is it that you're building right now specifically? You said a co-pilot, but could you please go more in depth?
Yeah. I mean, so it's just the beginnings. Like, I don't want to I don't want to
Right.
overpitch. It is really, to get to the basic financial statements, like balance sheet, P&L, cash flow statement. That's a whole set of work, right? That's accounting and bookkeeping. Then to make decisions as a founder, you need to know things like CAC, LTV, um, and cohort analysis. That's like a whole separate state. So for me, what I just want to do initially is like bring all those pipelines together. Every single source of data that you have that would help you make decisions as a founder. In D2C, for example, your Shopify data, like sales data, your cohorts, your QuickBooks, all of that into one place, your Klaviyo metrics, all that into one place to make decisions. So you could answer questions like, how much should I spend on ads next month? What was my burn rate last week? What was my best performing ad? Which ad leads to the highest LTV? Right? Like, how do you answer those questions today? I'm actually curious if you can even answer them because like it's very hard to answer them for
The
us.
last one, probably the which ad, like linking in a single ad to LTV, probably. I mean, perfect attribution is like trying to chase the sun.
Right.
I think there are different attribution. Well, you know about these probably more than me, but it's like there are different attribution models. None of
Yeah,
them is
totally.
perfect. I think it's all related to the lenses you wear to and
Totally.
you look at. I think that you can measure many stuff that I would probably focus on more holistic measures. As knowing the numbers is great, knowing CAC, knowing LTV, knowing margins, but attributing that to a single channel or to a single ad, I think these days are like, I don't know if in average there was a study that said, I don't know, 10 or 12 touch points between a brand and a
Right.
customer.
Yeah, totally.
Like I always tell the same example, like super quick. Like if you told me, hey, Ryan, you should watch this TV show, I would say, why? Well, because it's, I don't know, an action TV show. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then someone else told me, Brian, you need to watch this TV show too. Oh, somebody already told me about that. Why? Oh, because there's this actor in that TV show. Oh, great. And then somebody else comes and tells me something else. And I said, oh, now you got me because this is what I wanted to know because
Yeah,
I love whatever.
totally.
So there could be different reasons for people to be triggered and people take action, as you know, when they
Yeah.
are triggered. We, of course, accumulate, let's say, proof that something's good through these experiences and this exposure, but then there's something that triggers us. So you saw a Google ad, but then you saw a Meta ad, and then you saw whatever,
Right.
and then
Totally.
hey,
And what's
a
your
friend,
last
and
click, basically? Uh,
your mood at that moment. Maybe you're in the mood of, you know, this is for me right now. And then some other days is like, no, I'm not convinced.
yeah, totally. I completely understand that. And look, it's not perfect. It's not a perfect science at all. But we were also keeping track of every single piece of PR that came out. What was happening with that, right? Like, where were the sales spikes happening? Like, we might have had ads running at the same time as a PR push, at the same time as like a retail push, right? And it's not, when you have those things stacked, it's not perfect. But when they're isolated, you can actually start to extract what it could have been like, or model out what it could have been like if it was on its own, right? And so we did, luckily, as a brand, have those moments where we just have ads running. Like today, we just have ads running. But at the end of September, we're going to be on a TV show, right? And so then you'll have them stacked. And then Labor Day, there's a sale, right? And so I think there are moments as a brand that we have had where we have isolated that. And so we actually, using AI today, you could actually simulate what it would look like if you just ran that one thing, and
Yeah.
then if you added things. And so I think that there's a lot that's going to happen in the next few years in measurement. And so the fact that you even brought up OKRs in the beginning, it's like that is sort of, I think Google is the reason why I believe in measurement today. And I think there's a lot that we can do as brands, because I agree with you. I talk to so many brand founders and they don't have the answers to these questions because it's too hard to get the answers.
So
So
to your
how do we make it universally accessible?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so important. To your point, one last thing about that is, yeah, many brands, let's say that are in QVC or Good Morning America or all of those shows, Shark Tank, and they see, or a huge press release or a comment that they see a spike in sales for a specific commercial
Yeah,
date. Yeah, of course, you can track those back to specific actions
right.
in a certain way. Yeah, of course. What I'm saying is that I wish brands were that obsessed about, and I think we discussed this the other day as well, about measuring, so collecting, analyzing, and taking action
Right.
regarding zero party data.
Yeah.
Because these days, the model of getting the attribution, that's great. Server side tracking, whatever. It's like you can do many things there, and that's great. But then, what about the understanding what your customers really want?
Yes.
Why they want
Yes.
it,
Like,
when
what do
they
they
want it.
need? Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think there's the same way brands underestimated retention for a long time. These days, many are still underestimating that, and they are underestimating the power of getting to know their clients better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I
Yeah,
agree with you.
it's easier said than done. But when you think about that way, as you learned on Meta through this simple but yet powerful method, that is the questions, framework, or I don't know if it's a framework, but that simple task yield results. This is the same thing. Like, this is not hard. Collecting zero party data, it can happen in many ways. Post purchase surveys or any surveys,
Yeah.
a quiz. You could be calling your customers. You could be from whatever, reviews. There are plenty of ways these days to collect data from your customers firsthand and then
Mm-hmm.
analyzing that. Well, through tools or AI these days is like super simple. Like, you can start with the simplest form, which is, I don't know, uploading a lot of CSV
Like a
files with
CSV.
reviews,
Right. Exactly.
and they chat GPT. Why don't you tell me the following about these? Like,
Totally.
points, what do they want? What, if it's for themselves or for somebody else, whatever, what they like, what they hate, the keywords they mention, so I can use those in the marketing, blah blah blah, the objections they have, whatever, right? Many brands have their own communities, so you can scrape the communities as well and get a lot of feedback from there. And many, well, good performing ads from well-known brands came from their communities as well, using terminology that they hadn't thought about. So there's a lot you can do as a brand these days to unlock growth by listening to your customers as well. So I think it's both knowing your numbers knowing which channels perform the best,
Yeah.
and of course, knowing what your customers want to tweak all your marketing and sometimes even the product or your offer.
Mhm. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Yeah, just the beginning is understanding your metrics, and then you have to understand your customer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Actually, there's so many founders that I talk to. Um, I don't I don't think that a lot of us have the time to talk to our customers. And the challenge is that when you do talk to a customer, it is life changing, right? And so one of the challenges that I had is like even just getting the data of who to talk to, right? Like who should you talk to? Because you don't want to talk to just like any customer. You want
I
to
have an
talk
idea.
to, yeah,
What if I told you this the last time we talked? I think I did, but just in case for everyone
yeah,
else in the audience, well, it's like you can start by, and this is something that is not, it doesn't come from me. I learned this as we all do, you know.
yeah.
I in the early seasons of these podcasts, someone that spoke in a well-known conference. I think it was like this Ad World. I think it was the Ad World, you know, uh, and she was speaking about this specifically, and she came to the podcast and she said what I'm going to say, which is
Mm,
basically building three cohorts of people. The first one is non-customers, but they are, let's say, subscribed to your email list, to your
hmm.
newsletter.
Yeah,
So they've been around, they've been checking you out, but for some reason they've never converted. The second one is one-time customers. They bought once, never again. There might be a reason, maybe not, but that's the fact. The
yeah,
third column is the VIPs, the raving fans, right? Those who bought many times. So probably from the reason for doing these three cohorts is that it's like asking your parents if they think you're a good person or a good
yeah,
professional.
yeah. That's great. So you get three different viewpoints, right?
So
Yeah,
you don't want cheerleaders. You want three different cohorts to getting
that's right.
three different types of insights. Why these people never bought from you?
Yeah,
Some will say, who are you again? I don't remember. Like, so you need to be strategic. Like for those people probably don't like try to get engaged subscribers who never bought from
right,
you.
right.
Not like somebody who subscribed a year ago and doesn't remember who
Yeah,
you are. Second, it's like again, people who bought yesterday, people who had time to buy multiple times but didn't. So
yeah,
hey, you bought this. So you always call from a point of trying to get feedback and help. It's like I want to understand what made you buy this if you remember,
right.
and why did you decide to not buy it again? Many people will say, probably depending on the vertical, I didn't need this again. I don't know. But in the cases like, repeat purchase products that they need to replenish, and maybe they say, I don't know, made my screen dry or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, take notes. And from the raving fans, it's like asking your parents, it's like, oh, give me the
Yeah,
law.
of course. It's like
But
you're
you,
gonna
you
get
need
amazing
to buy
responses.
from me what other brands try. Why did you replace those brands for mine? And so you'll get those, and you don't need to call 1,000 people, but just to say, I'm going to talk to 10 of those a month,
Yeah.
10 of those, 10 of whatever. Just get started doing that,
Yeah.
because once you insights that you get, probably with your methodologies, let's say in your case, you will iterate
Yeah.
on the key learnings, and then you want to find out, hey, what do you think now? You know, did it change?
Absolutely.
That's what I think it's worth doing with your customers, at least.
Yeah. So that's great. That's a good framework. Thank you. I'm like learning a ton from you as well. Well, this is awesome.
Pleasure.
Yeah. I feel like if we could answer all the questions of how to run a company.
You keep talking forever, but I want to be respectful with your time. I think this was a great episode and different as well, because of course we talked about Lion Post, but we talked about many key insights and many key ways, at least from my point
Yeah.
of view, that are interesting for me first and for people listening to say, hey, there's a different way. Many people think, oh, I need to be probably a well-established brand to go into the Sephora. Well,
Yeah.
here example of the opposite. So probably you can do things differently. You can plan first and then execute based on that. You can gauge interest and validate demand. Even with a huge player like Sephora as
Yeah.
well, the methodology about, listen to questions, I take that for myself as well. So I wanted to thank you for coming to the show and delivering so much value.
Chris, thank you for asking such amazing questions that made me think too. And I feel like I've learned so much about myself in just this last hour. So thank you as well.
Thank you. That makes two of us. So for everyone listening to this, why don't you tell them, sorry, where they can go to learn more about you and the company?
Yeah. So our website is lionpose.com. Very simple. Instagram. So those are the areas you could find me.
Amazing. So Madhu, it was great to have you here in the podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This episode was brought to you by BSR Digital. We help DTC brands grow through paid ads and email marketing campaigns. If you'd like us to help your business grow, head on over to bsrdigital.com and schedule a call with us.